Hey, let's get into it. So this is going to be a quick style commentary on looking at the challenger player's action and the thought logic behind it. And what you're going to do with this video and you're going to take away are strategies, mindsets, and approaches that are going to directly enhance and improve your rank and solo queue performance. Okay. We're also going to be, look, you also have to be aware of the fact that there is a contextual difference between someone playing in Challenger with Challenger teammates and someone playing in Platinum with Platinum or Emerald or Silver teammates, okay? So we are going to be talking about that contextual aspect of what makes this guy Challenger and why it works and why it may not work for you and what you need to do in order to approach essentially a different rank, okay? Now, before I get started, I am coaching again, so the link is in the description below. If you want to get coaching, you want to get a session with me, connect with me. The link is in the description below and we can talk. So let's get into it. Now, the first decision owner goes ahead and decides to make is he starts Raptors. Now, you have to be aware when you're playing jungle where the enemy jungle started. And if you don't know, that's okay, right? We can see that Hecarim ends up, well, it's enemy Hecarim. We can see that Renekton ends up showing late, but that doesn't necessarily mean that Hecarim started topside. Okay, so you shouldn't assume. There are two things you need to be aware of. The first thing you need to be aware of is that, well, as I already mentioned, you shouldn't assume where the enemy jungle started and what he can do. Have all the options open that they can do anything. This is obviously dependent on what the type of the jungler is, and a lot of other things. The second most important thing that you have to be aware of when you don't have information on the jungler is you have to ask yourself, where does this jungler benefit from being? If the jungler, usually the junglers will path from towards their strong side, right? Strong side, if you don't know what that is, it's just your strong side of the map. And I have some videos going over that. Or you can just ask someone what strong side is. But you have to route over to, usually junglers will route over to their strong side. Now, you should know what enemy's strong side is. So you can assume that perhaps their route would be there, okay? Now, let's get into those Raptors into Golems. The reason he does Raptors into Golems and then Red, the reason for this sequence, the logic behind this sequence is that the Raptors and Golems are now going to spawn quicker, right? If he does Raptors, Red Golems, what's going to end up happening is now there's some time. There's nearly like almost 10 or 11 seconds of just time that owner has nothing to do because he was taking Red, okay? He wants to be able to take Raptors, then Golems immediately, and then he's free. He doesn't have to be in his jungle. He can go do whatever. That's why he basically sets his second spawn up in a way that allows him to be efficient. That's why he does Red. Again, just a quick tip, if you are looking to get information early as a jungler, you can always just use your ward. Or you can ask your laner to ward if they have prio. As you can see, Hecarim ends up showing top and the gank does go through. Now, let's ask ourselves, is this our fault? Is this our fault? Like, what happened, right? So as you can see, the Corki ends up getting a solo kill onto the Renekton, which is great. Unfortunately, Renekton TP's back, and Corki's very low. What Corki should have done on the third wave, you see what he's trying to do? He's trying to crash the third wave. Look at the top tower. Corki is trying to get the crash off on the third wave. He can't do that. Not with his HP, not with the mana he has, and with Renekton being there, it's not possible. Okay? So what he should do is he should just base. Now, if he bases and TP's back, there is a chance that owner might be able to support him. And it's unlikely that he'll get ganked by Hecarim because Hecarim is not incentivized to stay up in top lane because his bot side is spawning. As you can see, Hecarim starts top side, shows top side, 12 CS, and now we know that his next route is in the bottom side of the map. Okay? That's why you can see the pings being played on the bottom side of the map. As you can see, Rel is also moving, not able to find anything, and now we're just in the river waiting for the crab to spawn. He's just covering in case there's any fight. Renekton does end up committing, and we pick up a pretty easy kill, and now we're going to go ahead and take crab. Now, at this point, you have to be aware of a few things, okay? Hecarim is bottom side. Now, top lane is safe. If mid lane is volatile, you can hover it. We know that Hecarim's Raptors are going to more than likely respawn very soon because he started Raptors. So, we can put a ward on Raptors, and we can take a base, and we can run to our bottom jungle, and then we can get our Raptors. Now, if we end up wasting too much time, what might end up happening is we can lose our Raptors to Hecarim because he's bot side. If mid lane has no prio and Hecarim feels comfortable, he can take enemy, Diana's bottom side. So in that case, we'll have to end up chaining the Scuttle Crab with the bottom side spawns, okay? Getting level 4 Raptors here is very important, and if Hecarim takes that, he's gonna get a lot of XP, and we don't want that to happen. So we can either choose to immediately base and run to our Raptors. Then we have to chain Raptors with the Scuttle Crab. Okay? As we mentioned, Owner is covering mid, drops the ward, and now knows that Raptors are up and Hecarim is bottom side. And now he's going to go ahead and take his Raptors without having to be contested by the enemy Hecarim, because Jace is available. And then he goes into Golems. And as you can see, the pings are still coming out. The reason the pings are coming out in the bottom lane, as you can see on the minimap, is because Hecarim hasn't shown on Raptors yet, which means that because he's not up there, he must be bottom doing something, so we must be careful, okay? When you're in a situation like this, back in the river, okay? And we know that Hecarim is bottom side after taking Crab, you have to make sure you're looking at your bottom lane. If they're pushing outwards, then you must make sure that they're careful because they will get ganked by enemy jungle. So taking Raptors here is great. Hecarim is bottom side, and now we're just going to go take our Golems, and then we're going to more than likely look for a base because there's nothing else to do on the map. Unless bot lane is gankable, but if bot lane is ungankable, which in this case you can see, not to mention, you have to also be aware, bot lane has a ward. So one thing you should be aware of, because bot lane is not in vision at the moment, it means that they're in river. It means that Tri-Brush is warded. So that also means that if you don't have the proper setup, there's no way you're going to kill them. That's why we take Golems and we take a base. If bot lane, let's say, was, let's say there was a giant wave and enemy Kai'Sa is like 1 HP without flash or whatever, okay, maybe you can dive it, okay? If bot lane is, obviously it's not the case, so we just base. One thing I recommend, if you're a low elo jungler, and this is very important, if you're a low elo jungler, there's two things you need to focus on. The first thing is you need to focus on clearing your jungle effectively and quickly. The second thing you need to focus on is mastering your champion's mechanics. You don't have to worry about anything else right now if you're a low elo jungler, because your teammates are also low elo and aren't able to be they're not competent enough to play, they're not experienced enough to play with you. Okay? Now, when you get to higher elo, eventually you can, and there's other things to worry about and consider. But in lower MMR, you focus on two things: your clear and your champion mechanics. That's it. Okay? We know Hecarim might be showing topside. Now, this is a bit greedy. Okay, and I'll tell you why it's greedy. We know Hecarim is topside. This is information we already know because he started topside. Okay? And we know where he's at because we have vision. Now, Diana ends up running to top lane to try to get a kill, which is great, I guess. Now, look, you have a number of options here, okay? If you're low elo, just take your jungle, full clear, path to bottom, very simple. Now, if you're low elo and top lane is in a very easy gankable spot, you can gank top lane. If top lane is locked in our angle and we can gank it, you do that. But you must be aware that Hecarim could cover. Now, in low elo, I guarantee you no Hecarim is covering the crash, okay? But in high elo, there might be a possibility. But if you're in low elo and this gank isn't obvious, if the top gank is not just the most obvious, easy thing to do, then you full clear. Now, if your mid lane has priority, there is also an angle to run into Hecarim's jungle and smite fight win. If you're low elo, you can go do this. However, if you're high elo, you can do this even without mid prio. Right? Without mid lane priority, you can try to still go in and try to win the smite fight and play 2v2 with your teammates in mid lane because, you're strong, right? You're strong enough to play 2v2, so you can. This is a possibility. The problem here, what Owner does, is he ends up running to top lane to try to find a play. Unfortunately, the play is already over, but then he wants to make this invade happen immediately. That's not good, especially because he doesn't have mid prio. Now, I did say that you can have, you don't have to have mid prio to do this, because you can still play 2v2 if there's a skirmish here, it's fine, you have a Jace, but this is a bit greedy. The reason it's greedy is because Hecarim is literally here and Tristana will jump you, so this is what happens. Right, so Tristana just does end up jumping him, which is unfortunate, and he ends up dying, but that's okay. Now, at this point, you have to consider recovery. Okay, Hecarim is taking Grubbies most likely. We know that we're not going to have any top lane prio because Corki is moving into the river and Renekton can get the crash off. We also know that Tristana has first move on the wave, which means that mid may not also have prio, especially because he has no mana, or Jace. Bot lane just died. So your bot lane's just losing solo. So there's like nothing you can do there anyway. Your top side camps are up. You have to consider what is the most, how do I recover as a jungler here? The best way you recover is you first sink your camps, you give up what you've lost. You've lost the grubbies, they're gone. Okay? So right here, owner runs up to topside. Now, you can check grubbies if they're not gone. Okay? You can, but if they're obviously if they're taken here, which they are, just clear your jungle. So now owner's job is to get top lane to crash the wave, which he will. He doesn't have to be there. And owner's just going to path to bottom lane and sink his camps. And what this is going to allow him to do is it's going to allow him to sync all of his quadrants up, his top side and his bot side. So now the next respawn is going to be smooth and he can take it. We also know that Hecarim is bottom side when you look at the minimap because the pings are going out on the minimap that Hecarim is bottom side. Now, any fight you take as a 3v3 in bottom, you have to consider two things. One, Hecarim is there. And two, you also have to consider the fact that mid lane might move first. So if any skirmish continues for an extended period of time, you may lose, okay? Now, if mid lane is pushing out, you can cover. If bot lane is pushing out, you can cover. And we'll see what owner does here. So it seems like, okay, wow. What ended up happening there is Tristana messed up. Jay started pushing. Hecarim got baited. And we won. So this is huge. Now we're just going to crash mid wave and we're going to take top. Hecarim is basing, by the way. You have to be aware that he's based and he's running top because we know that he has 50 CS. And look, we'll talk more about this in detail later, right? But we know Hecarim is going to show here soon. And so a top dive doesn't feel too feasible. Now, let's say in low elo, okay, you could probably run and kill Hecarim again in his jungle, okay? In low elo, you could probably kill Hecarim. You could probably end up even diving top if Renekton is like really low, right? Like these are all possible chains. Now here, obviously, you can't do that because Renekton is fully healthy. All our plan here is to take Raptors, maybe Red if we're lucky, and we run because we know Hecarim will show here very soon. Okay. Jace should also base. I believe Jace stayed an extra wave because he thought it was safe, and it is. Now he needs to... And yeah, now we're just showing up top. We're getting the crash off. We know Hecarim is topside. We're just playing for the crash. We're not playing to kill. We're just playing to crash, and now we're just going to full clear. Hecarim here. Hecarim in this case, more than likely, is just going to go end up taking Dragon, and if he does, we can concede it. If we don't have any priority, and if we do, we can fight for it. Okay? Now, in low elo, you really have to master these things. You have to master being able to clear your jungle and play your champion. In high elo, you want to be able to clear your champion, have great mechanics, be also able to interact with your team and the map properly, and also be good at mid-game. Okay, mid-game is very important. Mid-game actually becomes more and more important the higher elo you go. Now, we'll talk about all this stuff, in time, and you'll begin to slowly understand it, but this is scratching the surface. This is the tip of the iceberg. That's it for today.